In 55 BC, Julius Caesar stood on the northern shores of Gaul, gazing across the sea toward a mysterious island shrouded in mist and legend. But to the Romans, it was a land beyond the known world. Its tribes, its warriors, its strange customs, all was subjects of rumor and speculation, but little was truly understood. Caesar, ever the ambitious general and political strategist, saw an opportunity. His expeditions in 55 and 54 BC would become legendary tales of exploration, military daring, and political maneuvering, forever linking his name with this remote island at the edge of the Roman world. These were not campaigns of conquest, but of reconnaissance and intimidation, designed to project Roman power into a realm no Roman army had ever dared to enter. The first expedition in 55 BC was a bold, almost reckless gamble. Caesar's primary goal wasn't to conquer Britain, but to gather intelligence and punish the British tribes who had been sending aid to his enemies in Gaul. He assembled 2 legions, the 7th and the 10th, and a fleet of transport ships at Port Asidius, a harbor we now know as Bul. As his fleet crossed the choppy waters of the English Channel, the Britons were waiting. Thousands of warriors lined the white cliffs of Dover, their shields and spears glinting in the sun, ready to repel the invaders. The sight was formidable, and the steep cliffs made a landing impossible. Caesar was forced to sail along the coast, searching for a more suitable beach. He found one near modern-day Deal, but the Britons had shadowed his fleet along the shore. The Roman soldiers, burdened by heavy armor, had to leap from their ships into waist-deep water, all while under a relentless barrage of javelins and stones. It was a chaotic and terrifying amphibious assault, a brutal test of Roman discipline and courage. The Aquilifer, the standard-bearer of the famed 10th Legion, famously jumped into the waves, shouting for his comrades to follow him unless they wanted to see their eagle standard fall into enemy hands. His bravery rallied the men, and they fought their way onto the beach, establishing a tenuous foothold on British soil. Once ashore, the Romans established a fortified camp and began to probe inland. However, their initial successes were quickly overshadowed by disaster. A powerful storm swept across the channel, wrecking many of the beached warships and scattering the transport ships that were bringing Caesar's cavalry. He was now stranded in hostile territory without his vital cavalry support and with a damaged fleet. Seizing this opportunity, the British tribes, who had initially offered peace, regrouped under a charismatic war leader named Caesar. They unleashed a weapon that was entirely new and terrifying to the Romans: the war chariot. These fast, 2-wheeled vehicles would race across the battlefield, with warriors hurling javelins before dismounting to fight on foot, only to be whisked away by their drivers if overwhelmed. This hit-and-run tactic completely disrupted Roman formations. The legions, trained for close-quarters infantry combat, struggled to counter this mobile and fluid style of warfare. Although the Romans won several pitched battles through sheer discipline, Caesar recognized his precarious position. With winter approaching, his supply lines insecure, and his fleet in desperate need of repair, he made the pragmatic decision to withdraw. The first expedition had achieved its primary goal of reconnaissance, but it was far from a conquest. Caesar returned to Gaul, having learned a valuable lesson about the challenges of invading Britain. He would not make the same mistakes twice. 1 year later, in the summer of 54 BC, Caesar returned. This time, he came with overwhelming force. His invasion fleet was a truly awesome sight. 5 legions, 2,000 elite cavalry, and a massive armada of nearly 1,000 ships, specially designed with wider hulls and shallower drafts for easier beach landings. The scale of this force was intended to send a clear message. When the fleet appeared off the coast of Kent, the Britons, who had gathered to oppose the landing, were so intimidated by the sheer number of ships that they simply melted away into the forests and hills. The landing was completely uncontested. Caesar had learned from his previous failures. He quickly established a fortified beachhead and, leaving a portion of his army to guard the ships, immediately marched inland. This time, he was on the offensive. Roman columns advanced through the countryside, crossing rivers, burning villages, and systematically breaking the will of any tribe that dared to resist. The message was clear. Rome was here to dominate. Cassivellaunus once again took command of the British resistance, But he knew a direct confrontation with Caesar's legions was suicidal. Instead, he adopted a sophisticated guerrilla strategy, using his knowledge of the terrain to his advantage. His forces retreated into the dense forests of what is now Hertfordshire, launching ambushes and hit-and-run attacks on the advancing Roman columns. He used his chariots to harass Roman foraging parties, attempting to starve Caesar's army and break its morale. But Caesar was a master of siegecraft and engineering. He pushed relentlessly forward, his legions building fortified camps each night. The campaign reached its climax at the River Thames. Cassivellaunus had heavily fortified the only viable crossing point with sharpened stakes planted both on the river bank and hidden beneath the water. He believed this obstacle would halt the Roman advance, but Caesar, undeterred, ordered his legions to ford the river. The Roman soldiers, with water up to their necks, charged across under enemy fire, their determination shocking the British defenders, who broke and fled. This audacious crossing shattered the morale of the British alliance. Soon after, rival tribes, resentful of Cassivellaunus's leadership, began to defect to Caesar, revealing the location of his main stronghold. Surrounded, outmaneuvered, and with his coalition collapsing, Cassivellaunus had no choice but to surrender. Caesar, ever the statesman, did not seek to annihilate him. He imposed terms. Tribute was to be paid annually to Rome. Hostages were to be handed over as a guarantee of good behavior, and Cassivellaunus was forbidden from making war on the tribes who had allied with Rome. Though victorious, Caesar once again made the strategic decision to withdraw from Britain before the onset of winter. He had accomplished all his objectives. He had projected Rome's power across the ocean, demonstrating that no people, no matter how remote, were beyond the reach of its legions. He had gathered invaluable intelligence about the island's geography, resources, and people. And perhaps most importantly, the campaign had generated immense political prestige for him back in Rome, fueling his popular support and solidifying his reputation as a peerless military commander. A full-scale conquest and occupation of Britain was never his intent. It would have required a massive, long-term commitment of troops and resources that he simply couldn't spare. Troubles were brewing back in Gaul, and the political situation in Rome was growing more volatile. His attention was needed elsewhere, so the legions boarded their ships and sailed back to Gaul. No Roman soldier would set foot on British soil again for nearly a century. In a grand scheme of Roman history, Caesar's expeditions to Britannia might seem like a minor footnote. They were not conquests that added vast new territories to the empire. Yet, their significance was profound. Caesar had pulled back the veil of mystery that had long shrouded the island.